Hey guys, welcome to Sketch a Day. I'm really excited. We're going to do something that you guys like to see, which is a car. But before we begin, I want you to hit that subscribe button, turn on alerts, be sure to come say hi on Instagram. I'm at SKETCHADAYDOTCOM, and definitely sign up for my newsletter. You'll want to do that because all I'll say is there's some goodies coming your way if you do. So we're going to be sketching with ballpoint pen, and I'm going to be using some different markers today because they actually behave a little bit differently with ballpoint pen as opposed to my alcohol-based markers. And we're going to be using Chartpak markers. So they are ad markers. They have a different solvent in them, which means they behave a little bit differently with the materials that I like to use for my line work. So with that, grab whatever you have. If you just want to watch along, that's totally cool. All the materials will be listed below in the video description, so you can always check that out if you want to support the channel. So let's get started. So I always like to work light till you get it right, and a ballpoint pen is one of the ways you can do that because it is pressure sensitive. Okay, now to draw this car, I'm going to just start with a nice ellipse here. And part of the reason I like to do this, just drawing something on the page, is it gives me a sense of the limits of my drawing. I can already see that I want to put a wheel probably somewhere back here, nice and light, and another one probably right here. And I like to throw a curve or arc further out as well. Now, the next thing I like to do if I'm drawing a car is these little squiggles under the wheels, okay? And that just helps me, again, kind of position or place things. Next, I do the rocker panel. Okay, so this is the main underside of the car. And if I extend that out far enough, it definitely gives me a sense of the limits of the front of the vehicle. I can also throw in a couple lines for headlights here as well. And then I like to kind of work on my wheel flares and body side. Now, since this is a cohesive design, I want to make sure that these lines kind of relate to each other. At least I try to make sure that is the case if I am designing or drawing a car. It just helps you have a more harmonious looking design or sketch as you're going. It's challenging sometimes when you're doing a car because sometimes what you end up with is the back, middle, and front just feeling so different from each other. So leveraging this ellipse that I drew in first, I can actually use that to kind of guide where the top of my vehicle will be. A nice curve in the front like so, and just rounding things out by finishing out our hood. Okay, and I'll get this wheel kind of mapped out a bit more. Identify where and how that flare is going to show up in the sketch. And by flare, I mean the flare around the wheel well. Let's get our B-pillar in. If it's a coupe, two-door coupe, it'll just have one door. So we'll keep it at one. Get the back kind of mapped out like so. Nice and loose. And we have a rough kind of sketch of a car here. Now for the wheel well, or the wheel rather, the rim, I'm just gonna stick with a nice simple rim today. Just a nice simple 6-spoker. And some lines behind are gonna help me identify, or rather shade in just a dark area for where the brake caliper would be and disc and all that good stuff. And now I can start to map out things like headlights. Okay, but again, because I'm working with this ballpoint pen, if I push a little heavier on that pen, I get a nice heavy line as opposed to my lighter lines that I might be sketching in. So a little center line there on our design just to map out the hood. Sometimes I like to map out a reflection, capture a little bit of the dash, some lines for my B-pillar, seats, and so forth. Just enough on the inside to be indicative of that, but not so much prescriptive, meaning it's not an exact representation of what's happening on the inside, but rather a gesture to show the design intent at a high level concept phase. All right, so just finishing out some lines here on the rims. And now that I'm feeling better about the design, this is where I can come in and go a little bit heavier with the ballpoint lines, like so. Okay. Let's get our wheel well here. I'm just going to rotate the page. I love rotating the page because it allows me to sketch in the way that's most comfortable for me at the time. And it really just depends on the sketch. So I'm not saying there's any specific way to do this besides whatever makes the most sense at the time. Now, I don't know if this car is electric necessarily, but I like to keep the front of the vehicle fairly simple. And on our body side, I'm just going to tie this line in to the headlight and also come over the rear wheel and have a nice little surface transition going on here on the side. Again, pushing a little heavier on the ballpoint pen is going to help bring out the details in the sketch that we want to see. So if you love working light, a ballpoint pen is a great way to do that without having to have a sharpener nearby, which can be difficult, especially if you're on the go. It might be hard to find a sharpener, right? So this is just a great way, if you do like working with a lighter touch, to be able to do that while you're out and about. All right, so just bringing out some of the details on the front here as well. I'm just trying to make sure the right lines pop and not get too overworked with my approach to this sketch. Because we are just going to be using some marker on top of this, and I want to make sure that the sketch isn't too heavy per se or hairy with the line work. Okay, nice light touch, never a bad thing. All right, a couple more details in the front. Like I said, not sure if this is a combustion engine or not, but we're just going to roll with it. And I just want to make sure some of these surfaces are at least somewhat accurate. Just bump the headlight out a little bit and kind of this front clip element here as well. Bring in a couple lines for parts and so forth. Sketch in just a couple little mirror placeholders. And now we have the inside of the vehicle. So hopefully you can kind of see how I went from the rough elliptical shape to creating a bit more robust sketch, if you will. All right, I'm just gonna give it a little breathing room above the wheel here, and that's gonna be shaded in dark, so I'm not too worried about it. But now at this point, I have my Chartpak markers here. I've got basic gray 1 through 5, and some good marker paper, and a blender, just in case. But I actually just picked these up because I had some questions from you guys about Chartpak markers, so I wanted to give them a go. So, like I always do, I'm going to start with light until I get it right. So I'm starting with the lightest of my grays here, and just being deliberate but also mindful of what's happening. So just above the wheel well, for example, leaving that a little bit lighter because that's going to capture some light. Same thing above this wheel well here. So as I shade this in, trying to be mindful of what's happening. On the body side, we're going to get reflections from the environment. Okay, things from the ground are going to reflect up into the side, and then the sky up above. So definitely keep that light. Here where we have these surface changes, I'm going to blend back from the edge of those changes. So blending back from this corner here, for example, just scrub that, kind of build up the value with this light gray and work my way back. Now Chartpaks, or ad markers, if you prefer to call them that, they do blend pretty well. So I would suggest playing with it a little bit and seeing what works for you in terms of your technique or approach. I like to think of them kind of like a big wet paintbrush. They are fairly juicy, put on a lot of ink very quickly. So that's something you'll want to kind of maybe get used to, do some practice strokes first, and then commit to it. All right, so now I've kind of got my base gray down. Let me actually shade this rim in as well here. And we'll do some stuff to make that pop. I don't have any colors for this sketch today, so this will just be grayscale. Okay, but again, just focusing on the light grays first. And now I can jump up to my next gray, which is going to be my basic gray 2, if I can find it. I'm always a mess. Okay, here we go. Basic gray 2. So at this point, I'm going to be focusing on things like, okay, on the rims here, you know, if these are slightly curved, at some point, there's going to be a little bit of shadow. And it's very subtle. But on the inside of the rims here as well, there's going to be some shadow. Like I mentioned, we've got the wheel itself that I want to make sure I capture, something like that. And underneath the car, you know, for any trim elements or things that might be hanging off. Now, as far as the marker treatment, details, and so forth, you can kind of do this thing that I do sometimes, which is render in an atmospheric way. I'll just call it that. What I mean is focus your efforts and so forth up front or on one spot. And then as you blend away from that area, you change your contrast, the details, and so forth. But again, thinking of these markers like a big wet paintbrush, because they are juicy, and make sure that you use them in a well-ventilated area, because they do have a tendency to smell noxious, I'll put it that way. The xylene chemical, there's no way it's non-toxic. It smells toxic. And so if you sit in an environment that's not well ventilated for a long period of time, this is not proven, but we used to joke about it at school anyhow, that you're just getting high off the markers, right? So if any of you have any stories about these, feel free to share them in the comments. But yeah, they smell a little toxic. Okay, so now I've switched to my basic gray 3 because I want to push the contrast. I'm always looking for ways in my drawings to push the contrast. And this is something that took me years and years to learn, but definitely don't be afraid of contrast in your sketches, okay? Because contrast is going to really be the thing that helps your drawings pop, especially if you apply the contrast in the right ways, in the right places, and so forth. Your drawings will really pop. So definitely something you want to try out. You can also try blending your markers in this way. One thing I like to do is kind of make a stroke and lift the marker toward the end of the stroke. Okay, and just kind of work the area a little bit, and you'll see that the colors start to blend. You'll get almost a gradient effect with the markers themselves. So that's something you can definitely try. Okay, so this is my beef with Chartpaks a bit. I just want to talk about this briefly, because I actually didn't try the basic gray 5. So I'm going to go left to right here with these grays. So this is 1 right there. Let's do 2. Okay, that's 4. So 2. And then 3. Let me grab 3 here. Basic gray 3. And then I'll just skip ahead to 5 right there. And 4. Okay, now I don't know if you guys can tell on the video, I'm going to move this up a little bit closer, but those grays are all different. Okay, so whenever I buy these markers, usually I'll buy like the first 3 in a series of grays and then use like a pencil to make it darker, because I find that this one looks a little purplish to me and this one looks green, and I would hate to mess up my drawing by going outside these 3. So This is 1, 2, 3, and then my cutoff would be here, 4 and 5. So if you're gonna get these, 1, 2, 3, I think is fine. If you've had better luck blending these markers, definitely let me know, because I have been consistently disappointed over the years. So I'm gonna jump back to some Copic markers here, just for these black spots I wanna get in. Okay, and I can do this because these are just areas I know that I want to be solid black anyways, and I'm not worried about the ballpoint pen bleeding into this solid black. So things like the wheels, for example, I'm not really worried about how that'll blend. My rocker panel and so forth. Okay, so nice black marker there for the wheel and for these shadowed areas. And I'll probably use this marker as well for the inside of the car and any of those details that I was trying to hint at without being so specific about. Okay, so a little bit of black there for the wheel. Got tongue-tied. And now using this Copic marker again, just on the inside. And on the glass itself, we'll just put a nice little gradient there. And then on the inside, capturing in shadow where I think things like the C pillar and B pillar and seats might be in the vehicle, but trying not to focus too much on the details of what's inside, but rather just hinting at them. Okay, nice blends, keep it loose, keep it fresh, keep it exciting. That's what I like to do with my sketches. All right, and we can blend that gray like so. The Copic markers do blend very well. All right, so back to these chart packs, and we'll finish adding a bit of contrast to our sketch here in the body side, for example. Okay, I've got my 3. I'm just gonna chuck this 4 and the 5. They need to stay away from me. So with the 2 here, a little bit of shadow just under this surface wing, and then as we transition, and the body side, making sure we get some blending in there. Okay, like so. And like I mentioned, just applying line weight in the right places can really help details just pop out, okay, where we need them to. So we have our headlight here as well, kind of a weird shape, but I'll keep it nonetheless. And this kind of like scooped in area under the light. Okay, and maybe this is just a little sliver of a turn signal that we can have in there. Can add some details like so. And now with my basic gray 3, just under all this stuff, I'm gonna go ahead and make that a bit darker and then blend toward the front. Okay, so now I have a shadow in there on that headlight, and finish out our blend. So these 2 surfaces are now at an angle to each other because of that contrast we've introduced. Okay, so again, that's part of the power of contrast in your sketches. When you put it in the right place, you're able to communicate surface changes, much like I did here in the front, okay, or on this little middle section of the front clip toward the bottom here as well, and so forth. All right, so there's my quick marker sketch using ballpoint pen and Chartpak AD markers. They are great if you do love using ballpoints because they don't bleed like I mentioned, and they hold up really well to a variety of inks and substrates. Now, I'm not using the best marker paper, so I did bleed through a lot, so you'll want to be careful to either have some filler paper underneath or just like printer paper, that kind of thing. Something cheap that you don't really care about as much. But if you are interested, My advice, be sure to use them in a well-ventilated area. They smell really strong, and I'm not sure if they are toxic or not. People have been using them for years. They're a particular favorite with landscape designers, architects, illustrators. So something you'll want to just be mindful of. I'm not in a ventilated area right now, and I'm just about done. Every Friday, I go live here on my YouTube channel, and we have a sketch and chat section. I'm live at 9 a.m. Pacific on Fridays, or 5 p.m. UTC if you prefer. And we just hang out and sketch. I take suggestions, give feedback, all that good stuff. So if you don't want to miss that, you'll want to hit subscribe, turn on alerts so that you don't miss when I go live. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time right here on Sketch a Day.